Hello and welcome. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. You're tuned in to Beyond the Darkness. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Listen, we're getting closer to Halloween, folks. We are only a few days away, and you still have a chance to help us with our Halloween for Hunger campaign. We need your help. We're getting close to our goal, but we're not there yet. Every year we help to raise money for Second Harvest Heartland, and every dollar we raise goes to supply 3 meals to a person in need. And we're doing this with Second Harvest Heartland because they help people right here in our communities in the United States, right in our backyard. Might be your friends, relatives, coworkers, people that really need our help right now. And by stepping up, every $1 that you donate supplies 3 meals to somebody in need. So please help us out, and you can do that by going to darknessradio.com and clicking on the Halloween for Hunger banner. Again, that's darknessradio.com. Click on that Halloween for Hunger banner. And you can email me for a link if it's easier. Just email me, dave@darknessradio.com. We really need your help out there, guys. Our goal this year is $15,000. We want to raise $15,000 to supply 45,000 meals for our friends and neighbors and coworkers in need. So please go make that donation. Again, darknessradio.com. Click on the Halloween for Hunger banner and join us. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Prime exclusive series Lore. It's a very cool 6-part episode anthology series. It's on right now, Amazon Prime, all 6 episodes, so you can binge watch over the weekend leading into Halloween. So if you're looking for good and creepy, you want to check out Amazon Prime's exclusive series Lore. Check it out right now. Warby Parker, also a new sponsor of the show, so make sure you support all of our sponsors. We'll talk about them in a little bit here. But joining us right now, it's the time of year, Halloween. You think of Halloween, you think of when you were young, when you were out there having fun and a great time. And listen, I love the paranormal, and you guys know that. I've been involved in doing the radio show for 12 years. I've had a chance to be on a lot of different shows promoting this. I've grown up surrounded by the paranormal, and my interest and fascination started from a very early age. That's why when we were approached a few years back to write a book, we wrote a book called The Other Side, a teen's guide to ghost hunting and the paranormal. It's written for everyone, but it's slanted a little bit more towards teens to try to catch them up to speed. Why we ghost hunt? What are we doing when we ghost hunt? And just kind of going over the different aspects. So I heard about a new show, and I was pleasantly introduced to the young man that's a part of it. His name is Colin Browen, and he's here with us today. He's got a show called Teen Spirit. He also has a YouTube program called The Paranormal Files, and he's here tonight to talk to us a little bit about his experiences with the paranormal and supernatural. Colin, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
Hey, this is great. I'm so excited to talk to somebody who's younger and doing this, and I want to know from the beginning, why did you have this fascination with the supernatural?
Well, my parents have always had this innate love for Halloween, and we've always had a cemetery in the front yard, 31 days of celebration every year. Grew up watching, paranormal movies and kind of spooky stuff. And I was actually diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 12, which, changed my life completely. And ever since then, I've had this kind of fear of death that I can't escape from. I think everyone's a little afraid of death, no matter who you are, because no one knows what happens. I don't know what happens. The preacher doesn't know what happens. Everyone just takes their best shot. So once I started to be able to go out on my own and bring cameras and go to, haunted locations, I got a car when I was, 15, so I could go drive out to these spots and start checking this out. It really piqued my interest, and I started to really delve into what it means to be a spirit. And that whole process has gotten me here, and I've just, taken it and ran, and I can't believe that what's happened has happened, and it turned from a hobby into a literal job, so it's amazing.
That's very cool. Well, now, do you think it's strange? I mean, when you kind of look at it from an outside perspective, do you think it's strange that somebody so young has such a fascination with the end, with what comes next?
I would say yes, but if you kind of look at a lot of the culture of today, I feel like a lot of younger people are finally starting to realize that you kind of have to come to terms with the fact that you're going to die to really live your life to the fullest. Because you know what? If you live your life thinking one day when I die, I'm going to go to heaven and everything that I want is going to be there waiting for me, then you're not going to go out and do what you want in life because it's stopping you. It's holding you back. So you have to realize that you're going to die and you don't know what's going to happen. So in doing so, you have to, go live. And that's what I think is the most beautiful thing about death. It's really not scary. I mean, it's scary to have to die, but like the actual concept of death is just beautiful. And not knowing what happens afterwards is what's crazy to me, because there's so many things in life we know, in and out, exactly what happens. But death is just this huge mystery of the human race. No one knows anything about it beyond, biological death, like the processes and how it happens. But after you die, that's complete gray area. And that's what I'd like to try to tackle and dive into because, but yeah, I mean, being young, I got skull tattoos. My best friend's got a coffin on him. I'm looking at my bedroom right now. I've got tombstones on the walls and little ghosts everywhere.
Oh, you can stop trying to sell me. You're not a teen. Your answer was like an 80-year-old man with a lot of time on his hands thought. No, I'm really impressed. What a great answer. But you make a good point. Really, if you are just focused on, this is what's going to come, it kind of takes away from the living aspect. So I've been, like you, I was fascinated with death and fascinated with what comes next from a very early age. So I can appreciate, and I think you put it very eloquently into words exactly how I've always kind of felt about the subject. So now I understand why you're blowing up and have all the attention that you're getting for your programming and investigations. Talk to me about your earliest memory about a paranormal experience that you've had.
Well, I would say that when I was younger, there was always stuff that was happening around the house. I would wake up. I can remember even when I was like 5 or 6, I'd wake up and I'd hear the faucet on in the hallway, and I'd always go to check it out, and there would be no faucet running, no one up in the house, but there would be water in the sink, like in the bowl when I touched it. So that was like very beginning of all of this stuff. And my actual peak of the fascination, like where it started, the impetus was when my family moved into a house. We're from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and we moved into a house my junior year of high school. And from that moment that we got to the house, there was so much paranormal activity. I can't even remember all the stuff that happened. It was literally the first day that we got there. My sister actually was alone in the house when my mom and dad and I were off getting boxes to bring over. And by the time we came back with the boxes, she was literally banging on her window, like screaming, crying, because she thought that there was a group of people in the house moving stuff around and like banging on the walls and walking over to her room. Wow. She locked herself in. Yeah, that was literally the first day. And I felt like I was in like a horror movie for a while, just because I kept telling my parents every day, I see shadow figures in my room. I'd see like 7-foot tall people sitting there. I would see these things crawling around on my floor, and you could hear shuffling, and no one believed me. So I felt kind of like, what is it, sheep who cried wolf? Whatever that,
Right, the boy who cried,
boy who cried wolf,
right.
Not the sheep. Right. But I felt like that. And eventually this activity actually got so bad that my parents came to me and were like, Colin, I'm sorry we haven't been listening this entire time, but we know that it's haunted now. We need to go see somebody. So we went to a psychic, and it was a group of 5 psychics to come and cleanse the house. And that whole process was crazy. They went room to room, told us exactly every type of spirit that was in the home. My mom and I actually researched the property at the courthouse in Sioux Falls, and it turns out once we did some digging through like legitimate old paper maps of the city from like, I think it was 1890s or so, there was actually a settlement where our house was, and there was a bunch of little dots on the settlement. And the guy at the courthouse actually said, this could be a cemetery. I'm not going to tell you, yes or no, but this could have been an old pioneer cemetery where they buried people, and, maybe they moved the bodies off later on. Maybe they just forgot that they were there in the first place. But the people who lived on the property at one point also, the father and son, did not have death or burial records, even though the wife and daughter had both death and burial records. So the historian also thought that these 2 guys that were there could possibly have gotten some sort of old pioneer fever and died there in the house and then just been buried there on the land. And what really sells this whole point, I mean, like, you know, you can go off maps, it's kind of weird, but we had an actual well from the 1800s on the property that we had moved off, and in the well they found arsenic. And it is a fact that, you know, cemeteries or bodies, you know, stones, they leach arsenic into the ground and contaminate the water supply. And there's only, I think, 2 or 3 things that, like, natural occurring arsenic can be, and a cemetery nearby is one of them. So that kind of raised a major red flag, but it all left the house, and it was quiet for a while. But since then, and since I've been doing all these investigations, stuff just consistently happens. Even, like, I'm in college now, I go to school in Texas, I'm in Austin, and I'll get texts maybe once every 2 weeks, my parents like freaking out. Oh, a glass just got thrown off, you know, the balcony. Oh my God, Tessa just heard someone screaming in the basement, all this kind of stuff. It's wild to me. It just doesn't end.
Well, Colin, I've got to know, okay, you're seeing things crawling around your room, on your floor, standing in your corner of your room. First of all, how do you not lose your mind having that much activity? I had a few little things happen to me in my home growing up, and had it been that, I'd have burned the place down and moved away. That's it. End of story.
No, I was losing my mind. That's what I'm saying. Like, no one was listening to me, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot stay here anymore. Mom, Dad, like, we need to do something about this, but no one was making any move at all, or even, you know, validating that.
What was the turn of the screw that suddenly your parents were like, oh boy, now we believe you? What was their moment that really shook them to the core and made them realize this wasn't just the imagination of a little kid?
Well, it started out small, as it usually does, you know, to every person, but they started to have every TV in the home turn on at the same time at night. I think it was 1 o'clock, and they would all turn to static. We have a system in our house with the Vizio TVs where static is literally inaccessible. Mm-hmm. You can't get to it on any input, and every TV would come on. The one in their bathroom, the one in the basement, in the, you know, living room, all of them at the exact same time, blaring noise.
Wait a minute. You have a bathroom TV?
Yeah. Well, my parents,
are your parents looking to adopt? I need to move in there right now. Haunted and a bathroom TV. I'm in.
I'll give him a call. Let's bring him on. But yeah, that after the TV stuff, they started to hear noises, and it just started to get this really malevolent vibe to everything. So yeah, that was really when it started, though. The TVs, I remember distinctly. I could hear it from my room, the static.
Would they see anything in the static? I mean, was it going poltergeist on them? Would they hear voices? Or was it just the fact that the TVs would all turn on to this static, non-existent static channel? Yeah,
I think it was the actual channel. 'Cause I think that they were too freaked out to actually sit and stare at it, because that was just weird on itself. But all the TVs also were not on the same circuit. So there's no way that, like, an electrical surge could have come through and suddenly powered on the TVs. They were all different, you know, routers, different wiring. Every setup was completely different. So that's what's crazy to me.
When you would see these things in your room, and I don't mean to keep going back to this, but I know I'll get beat up by my listeners if I don't pull this story out a little bit more. When you would see these things, were they well defined? Were they translucent? Were they just dark, silhouetted, shadowy figures? What can you explain to me about them?
I would call them 100% shadow figures.
Okay.
Because when I would see them, this is what I always tell my friends. I would look out, my room has blinds, and every time that I woke up, the moon would be visible. I don't know if this was on purpose by whatever force or energy was there, but I would wake up and the moon would be shining through my blinds. And I could see it was about a 7-foot, 6.5 tall man with kind of a hat, which I never really figured out, but you could make out the entire silhouette of the person. You could see the shoulders, you could see the fingers. And what's really creepy about what would happen is that I would look and stare at it for like literally 20, 30 seconds. And I could make it out clear as day. This is probably 5-6 feet from my bed. And as I was looking at it, it would start to slowly get closer to me. And as it got closer and closer, I remember one time I was so afraid. It was like in a horror movie. You always yell at people, "Why aren't you moving? Why aren't you screaming? Right. You're so stupid." But I physically could not move. I was so afraid. I was like, I need to turn the light on. I need to turn the light on. I need to turn the light on. But like, I could not will my hand to go over to the light and turn it on. But eventually I snapped and turned the light on, and it would just be gone every time. That happened like 6-7 times.
Interesting. Did you ever find yourself when you were in that moment, the shock and awe of what you're seeing is one thing, but once you kind of got past it, did you really feel fear from these things, or just shock that they were there in your room and you could see them?
Yeah, I never felt a truly, negative presence from that stuff. It's more the actual, like you're describing, shock of waking up in the middle of the night and seeing someone in your room. Like that's just creepy enough, not knowing what's there, but it was never a negative energy. There are places that I've been in my investigations and traveled to where you step in the room and it's just like, man, I should not be in here. It's icy. It's this weird energy. I was describing on the top of my arms. I can feel it. It was never like that in the house. You could tell that these were just kind of confused spirits and or some sort of energy that just refused to leave. But it didn't ever seem like it wanted to hurt us. No one ever got scratched, attacked, purposefully scared. It was just all this weird, unrelated activity.
Did these beings ever try to communicate with you, talk to you, get up in your face? I mean, what was that like?
I've never really thought about it in that way. They really didn't try to actually relay any sort of message. I know one of the really weird things that happened, my dad and I were actually out eating dinner the day that we were supposed to have the psychic investigation, and we were coming back, and I had this really deep cut on my finger. And I had no idea how I got it. Like, we were talking about it the entire ride from dinner back to my house. Like, how'd you get that cut? I have no idea. Like, it was very deep. You could see it. It was a thick gash. And we got back to the house, walked in the door. I had my camera on, so my hand was physically wrapped around the camera. No one could even see my finger. And the first thing the psychic comes in when she walks through the door, raises the exact finger that I got the cut on, goes, "Who's got the cut right here? Who's got the cut?" And, instantly chills through my body because I have the cut. My dad looks at me. He's like, "Oh, my God, we just talked about that. Like, I had no idea how it happened." She turns to me and says, "That is the spirit of the woman that is here manifesting on your finger." Apparently, there was an old retirement home right next to my house. And she said that this was the spirit of an old woman who died at the retirement home, who loved to cook, who had floated on up the hill and was in our kitchen right now making dishes and doing stuff, and that cut was a manifestation of an injury that she had had in her life. But it was not meant to go on the hand. It was just some energy projection that had occurred because it was there and present. But that was like the most direct message, I would say, even though that's not much of a message. But it was something from the spirit that came to us. Other than that, it was just repetition. The same things would happen. The TVs would turn on. We would hear the same screams or vocalizations, never words, just grunts, growls, or what would the yells.
What would the psychics tell you was going on there? Who did they think was responsible for all of this activity?
The psychics in my house, when they came through, actually believed that there was a number of spirits in the home, not only the two male presences that they had initially detected. That's why I thought it was strange, from the beginning, the fact that she thought that it was two male presences, and we had gone to the courthouse and found out that the father and son had no burial or death records. That kind of correlated and crossed streams right there. But they thought that there was the spirit of an elderly woman who loved to cook. She was in the kitchen. There were the two somewhat ominous black shadow spirit men that were in the home. They had a very distinct male energy. And she said that there were a couple other, I can't remember the exact words she used to describe them, but they were just kind of malevolent little trickster spirits without a definite shape or form, but they floated throughout the house and caused a bit of a ruckus. And all of these spirits had come through and knew that they were all there together. They knew of each other's existence, but they would all come through at different times. Never, she said, were they all together in the house at the same time. And it makes total sense because we never had any of the experiences in the kitchen even close to any of the experiences in my bedroom that were scary. The kitchen ones, my sister would hear pots, pans moving. We'd hear voices in the kitchen, stuff like that. Then the more, active, creepy stuff, like the things shuffling on my floor, that was in my bedroom and almost exclusively in my bedroom and my sister's bedroom at the end of our hall.
That's weird to me. I mean, you got to love when medium psychics can come in and they're picking up on something that you can historically track down and seems to make sense with why you're having this kind of activity in the house. Once you kind of figure it out, that these two may be the culprits, would you try to address them directly?
We did, actually. And the psychic Donna, when she was there, she actually claimed to have cleansed the spirits. And I really do think that it worked, because after that, we had no experiences at all for about 7-8 months. And this is coming from 2-3 times a week we'd have major stuff happen, like, hear a voice, or everyone would stop because we heard footsteps upstairs, stuff like that. But once she did the cleansing ceremony, I had friends over that night. It was the night before my birthday. We had 7 people in my basement. Every single one of them very devout Lutheran, very devoutly no belief in ghosts at all, which was funny to me because I had just filmed all this stuff and done all this, lived through this experience, and everyone was calling me crazy. So I told them the story, told them exactly what happened that day. We're sitting in my basement at 2 a.m., and there are these gigantic bangs on our windows. All of our doors downstairs are windows, and there was just boom, boom, 2 huge knocks. It woke everybody up. All my friends got up screaming. They thought someone was standing there. Parents ran downstairs, thought we destroyed something. No explanation. There was snow on the ground. We checked for prints, checked for a bird that hit the window, checked for physically everything. There was nothing. And the next day was my birthday. We're out for birthday lunch. And when we get to this restaurant, this is insane to me. We walk in, there's the entire group of psychics. They're sitting down eating lunch already. We had somehow chosen the same restaurant in the entire city. And walk over to them, and before we can say anything, one of them stands up and says, "Quick question, don't tell us anything, but did you guys have, I think, 2-3 knocks on your windows last night? Maybe around, 1:30, 2 a.m., 3 a.m.? And we were like, jaws dropped instantly. Parents just had nothing to say. We're like, oh my God, yes. We had 2 loud bangs literally at 2 a.m. And she's like, oh, that's what I was wondering. I was going to call you today, actually. We had the exact same thing happen to us. That means that the energy is releasing from the home, and it was letting us know that it's leaving. Which, I don't know if I buy into whatever that, theory is of the energy release, but wow. It was so crazy that they said that before we even had the opportunity to say, hey, hello, how's it going? That was first words out of their mouth. So that really confirmed everything to me that it might have worked.
All right, so they've hopefully cleared your house, and now the spirits seem to be settling down, and you're going through this. I want to know a little bit more than once this all settles down, does that start to quell your interest in this? Does it take the spirits coming back to life? Pardon me, or pardon the metaphor, but I mean, does it the haunting reignite your passion, or did you already keep that passion alive after the initial issues that you were having there?
Well, after I started telling everybody about this, I was actually asked by the high school newspaper at my high school to come with them on a ghost hunt. And I went down, and that was about a month afterwards. And so much stuff happened, so much activity during that ghost hunt, that I decided to bring a camera down into the basement and film. And that is what became my most watched video to date. It's got 155,000 views on YouTube right now. It's a documentary I filmed in my own high school, Lincoln High in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So much crazy activity, legitimate voices talking from the other side of an empty, sealed basement, pianos playing by themselves, people getting scratched. I could not believe what happened, but that was so soon after my own personal experience that it really just put a torch to the entire thing. And from there, I started filming all my own little vlog videos, editing, putting them all on YouTube. And, got Teen Spirit, filmed that. I've been traveling, just filming constantly, and it's just snowballed from there into this gigantic thing where I'm known as Kid Spooky now by all my friends and family. There's no one else really that can do the ghost thing in my friend groups like me. That's all I ever get to talk to people about nowadays is ghosts.
I understand that. I've got to ask you now, Colin, as we're talking about the weirdness of all the stuff that's going on, you said you got to investigate your school. Now, had there been rumors that the school was haunted, or was it always just one of those facts that we all just know it's haunted?
No, there was actually nothing anywhere about the school being haunted, which is why I was so genuinely surprised at what happened. I mean, going to school there, I had heard stories over the years. Oh, a janitor killed themselves in the auditorium. Oh, there's some weird things that happen, but like, it was never an actual documented thing. Like, no one had come up to me and said, oh, the school's haunted. Have you heard the school's haunted? There's nothing online anywhere about it. And once I actually got contacted by the people that worked at the school newspaper, and I started interviewing people throughout the school, I started interviewing teachers, I started interviewing janitors, everybody swore that the school was haunted. It was insane to me that I had never heard, a single thing about any sort of presence in the school. And here I was 2 weeks later interviewing my own computer sciences teacher, and she's like, oh yeah, I saw this shadow figure walk by the door 2 nights ago, and it was banging on the doors, and the janitor over here has actually heard screaming in the basement, and most of the janitors will not go in the basement. There's only 2 of them that will, and that's a fact. Some of the janitors that we talked to refused to even go down or be on camera with us at all. Like, they would not step foot in the basement. We invited them to come through, middle of the day, lights on. They refused to go down there, which is, it says a lot to me that people are so spooked in some of these cases that they literally refuse to even step foot on the grounds. That's powerful to me because that means that there's something down there. You're not just making that up. These people aren't stopping themselves from going down there because they want someone to believe in a ghost. They're just legitimately afraid of what might happen.
Were you able to do any historical reference to find out why that place would be so haunted? You hear the rumors of the suicidal janitor or this or that or the drug overdose, but were you able to actually find any proof of that?
Well, when we brought the same psychic that came to our house down into the basement with us for another episode that we filmed, and she was able to discern that it was the spirit of a kid who died in a car crash who was in the basement, or that's what she claimed, at least. She thought that it happened in the parking lot to the school. A kid died. I think it was in the 80s. So that was, 30 feet from the basement. I don't know why his spirit would have transferred over to this basement, but she said she could feel it. She could see the car crash. She could, tell that this was a young man, age 21. It was his actual age when he died. I can't remember exactly the circumstances. I think he slid on ice, but it was something like that. But my personal theory on, the whole haunting at the school, I'm a very big believer in energy, obviously. I don't a lot of times like to call paranormal stuff ghosts. I actually really don't like the term ghost hunter. I get that a lot, but I just really, it gives this bad stigma to everything. All the ghosts in Hollywood, everyone, expects a woman in a white dress crying black tears, screaming at you from the hallway. That's just not at all what any of this stuff is. It's way more scientifical. It's this energy that everyone exudes from their person. It's what people would call the soul. So when you have all of these kids that go to this school constantly, 1,000 kids every single day, and there's bullying going on. There is, deep depression from some of these kids. There's home abuse. There's a lot of kids that get sexually abused. There's bad grades, and there's just tons of negative energy, so much stress in this environment that I feel like all of this energy from these people has come together and formed I don't know if it's intelligent necessarily, but some sort of entity, an energy, form. Yeah, but it is negative. That down there in the basement was 100% very, very dark. I was afraid to be down there. Terrible vibes. But I felt the entire time like it was just this combination of things from all these kids. It's like the imprintment theory, which I'm sure, obviously you've heard of, or the
right.
stone tape theory. It's
right.
all the same thing. It's all this energy from people. You got 100 depressed kids every day sitting above the basement. All of that energy goes somewhere. And if it's all in the same environment, maybe, just maybe, it all clumps together, and eventually when it gets so powerful, it becomes its own form. And that's what I think happened in the school. I think that it's just this omnipresent force that's there. It's in everyone's home, everyone's workplace. It's in churches. It's in government buildings. But a lot of times people just don't see it, recognize it, or refuse to believe that it's actually there. But it was there in the school.
How did the school react when you put this video up, I'm sure that drew some attention towards your school, didn't it? Were they happy that this information was out, or did the school district get a little irritated that you were releasing this information?
Well, actually, it was really, really cool. I was tight with the principal from my school. Her name is Val Fox. What a wonderful woman. I actually went to her and I said, hey, Val, I really want to do filmmaking as a career. You've known this my entire career here at Lincoln. Is there any way that I could actually show the film in the school and do sort of a fundraiser? And she said, okay, 100%, give me a date, let's get it done. So we actually had an entire premiere at the school. We took the auditorium in the school, put up spider webs, skeletons from the ceiling. We showed the film live. Literally 500, 600 people came out to see it. I was on the front page of the newspaper in Sioux Falls, on the news. A ton of people came to see it, and we gave most of the profits back to the high school, actually, to the newspaper, because they were lacking funds. So I actually helped them to keep the newspaper going, and in turn opened all these people's eyes to the paranormal.
Fascinating stuff. We have to take a quick break right now. Amazon Prime exclusive lore presents Theater of the Mind. It's time now to go into the archives of Darkness Radio for a new Theater of the Mind. Charlotte. A true story from a listener wishing to remain anonymous. When I was around 8, my family moved into an old colonial home that was built back in 1810. My father still lives there. Until I was 17, every night before I would fall asleep, I would feel a pressure next to me as if someone had just sat down on the bed to my side. This would always be accompanied with a feeling of increased pressure in the air and the sounds of the springs in my bed being compressed. Although I knew this probably didn't happen to everyone, I didn't think about it much until I got a cat. He was a great present for my 12th birthday. Each night, he would sack out at the bed near my feet. Each night, he would bolt from a dead sleep and glare at something in the doorway before hightailing it out of there and screeching down the hall. A few moments later, the pressure would return. Again, while this was a weird thing to happen, I didn't really question it. Maybe the cat was just neurotic. I didn't talk about this nightly occurrence to anyone. However, I would refer to this feeling, this presence, what have you, as Charlotte, and I never could quite figure out why. One day in the summer when I was around 13, an elderly man and his middle-aged daughter pulled up to our house, walked up to the door, and knocked. They began to explain to us that the father had lived in that house with his aunt while he was a boy, and that he raised his family there for a few years. They had been visiting family in the neighborhood and wondered if they could just take a tour for old time's sake. My mom said sure. She and my sister and I led them around the house, and they recalled different memories throughout time. Afterwards, my mom asked them if they remembered strange occurrences or stories about the house. Like ghosts? The old man asked, and he chuckled. His daughter became very quiet and said firmly, "It's not funny, Dad." The man explained that everyone who slept in one bedroom felt a little unsettled, and his daughter interrupted to say that she always felt as if someone was sitting on the edge of her bed when she tried to go to sleep. Her father said they used to joke that it was just his aunt looking out for them. His Aunt Charlotte. Now this confirmed what I had never admitted to myself. I had a freaking ghost that basically tucked me in at night for the previous 5 years. Going to bed was never freaky or scary. I just tried to ignore the feeling when it came. Until one night when I was around 16 years old. My parents had been going through a difficult patch in their marriage. I was feeling depressed, and in general, it was just a weird year. I went to bed. After about 20 minutes, the cat took his typical bolting exit from the bed, and I felt the familiar presence on my side. Then, I felt a hand brush through my hair. I ran straight downstairs to the living room where my mom was dozing. She woke up when I burst into the room, saw my face, and asked what was wrong. I told her I had had a nightmare, and I left it at that. I spent a week sleeping in the guest room. When I got the nerve to finally go back to my room, I was nearly asleep when I realized I didn't feel the pressure next to me. I did feel pressure in the air, so I rolled on my back, and that's when I saw the figure of a woman in her 60s wearing a house dress her hair pulled back tight into a bun. She stood there with her arms folded. She was looking right at me. She had a look of concern. When I finally found my voice, I said out loud, "I don't care if you stay, but I can never, ever, ever see you again." And she disappeared. I never did see her again. A few years later, after my parents divorced and my dad moved in with his girlfriend and her 4-year-old son, I wasn't really surprised when she told me that her little boy said a lady named Charlotte would come and tell him stories at night. If this isn't enough for you, 5 days of the best in paranormal talk radio this week, plus True Crime Tuesday, plus Coast to Coast tonight, Coast to Coast tomorrow, you can go check out podcast1.com. I'm on Bill Engvall's show. He's a comedian. You know him from the Blue Collar Comedy Tour and so many other great programs. Bill Engvall had me on for his Halloween special, and that's available right now. His show is called My Two Cents with Bill Engvall. My Two Cents. You can find that at podcast1.com and get even more of the best of paranormal talk radio when I get to invade the humorous world of Bill Engvall and talk about some of the things and our favorite memories from youth and Halloween and some of the scariest stories. So go check that out as well. Speaking of scary stories, it smells like Teen Spirit around here. We've got with us on the line the host of Teen Spirit, and Colin, it's cool to have you on and spend some time, but I've got to be honest with our listeners. From time to time, we get guests on who are really kind of freaky. And I don't mean that they're like weird. I just mean that they start bringing the weirdness. And what people don't know is that twice during this interview, our audio is completely shut down. Our systems and our software have completely crashed. I've been able to save both segments to tie them back together. So hopefully it'll be one seamless, effortless issue. They'll never even know that existed. But after the first crash, what was it that you started to tell me about? You were saying that you had a recent experience with an actual TV news station where similar things were going on.
Yeah, this exact thing happened last week. Is today Thursday?
Today's Friday. It's the Friday show, yeah.
Oh, that was actually last Thursday. So about just a week ago now. This is what's crazy to me. When we were doing this live ghost hunt with the local news in South Dakota, Sioux Falls, the actual feed on the live camera cut out completely. It went from live stream right to the studio. They had the people watching in studio, the anchors, and as we were talking about this stuff, the actual stream cut out, and then the camera died entirely. Fresh batteries. The camera guy was completely freaked out. The anchor had never seen this happen. I mean, these are guys who do live news every single morning, and the guy told me that this had never happened to him. I mean, like, how often do you see a live news report that gets cut out? That never happens.
No, that's very rare, and then we've had it happen twice. Now, here's the weird thing. Just when we were talking in the last segment, I wrote down on my notes here, shut down, so I could make myself a notice about when the audio shut down the first time so I could tie them together. As soon as I wrote the word shut down, both of my systems shut down again.
Oh my God.
Like, I'm sitting here looking at the words, literally, as soon as I got done writing shut down, both systems crashed. And I probably should stop saying that because I don't want it to happen again. But, very, very weird stuff going on.
Wow.
So you've brought the weird for us today. I guess it's the holiday purpose for you, Colin. Tell people real quickly so they can find your show, Teen Spirit and Paranormal Files. Where can they locate these?
Teen Spirit is available for free online through Go90. Go90.com is the website. It's Verizon Wireless's and Complex News' website. All you have to do is go to Go90.com, and Teen Spirit should be one of the top shows on the website. You can also download the app. It's way more streamlined. It's completely free. No charge to watch any of the videos. Right now there should be 15 or so up right now. And if you want to find the Paranormal Files, which to me is the more crazy stuff that I do, it's all self-edited by me, self-produced. I film everything, edit it myself. That is just on YouTube. If you type in The Paranormal Files, I'm the first result that comes up. You'll see me a year and a half ago with way shorter hair and no tattoos and no beard. And it's pretty hard to miss. But yeah, those are all available online, including the one that I was talking about earlier, the video we filmed in the high school.
I will put up links to both of those on this show so you can find it, folks. When you're listening to the show, however you're listening to it, read all the information. There'll be 2 links at the bottom so you can watch both of his programs. How did they respond once you kind of blew the lid off how haunted your school really was? And I understand that you raised money and you did some good for them, but how did that impact? You had 600 people in an auditorium at the school listening to the evidence, seeing the evidence that you collected. What was the overall response?
A lot of people thought it was fake, obviously. You know, I've had that so many times over the years now that I've been doing this. Oh, this is the fakest thing I've ever seen. But I would say about 3/4 of the people that walked out were legitimately kind of freaked by what they had just seen, because it's very crazy. I mean, the voices are some of the clearest I've ever heard, and this is happening in the same building that they were in right there. They have to go to school the next day. Some of the movie we actually filmed in the auditorium that we were sitting in showing the movie. So it was a big meta, connection between the movie and the people. But in town, I actually got a couple letters from some local pastors, like real, out in the country, small church people that sent me letters to my school saying, you need to stop playing with the devil. You're not promoting a good thing to these kids. You are the devil. Like, really rude, mean stuff. And like these strange packets that had little leaflet books with drawings of, tombstones that said, you're next. And like, it was very bizarre. But we were talking about my principal earlier. This was the really cool part. She actually had, I think, like 25, 30 people, parents, people in the community that called Lincoln. And she was telling me in the hallway that they were very mad that they were talking about ghosts or something paranormal in the school. They didn't think that it should be mixed in the school because, it's not Christian. It's not. They were complaining about the presence of God. And she literally told me that she told them to shut up, and she hung up the phone. I was like, thank you, Val. That is the coolest thing that I could ever expect a high school principal to do.
That is very cool.
It was very well received in town. And yeah, that's what kicked everything off. That's the video that got my production company to find me for Teen Spirit. So
let's talk about some of your other haunted locations and some of the freakiest experiences you've had. I'd love to hear it. I know our listeners would.
Well, I would say that recently, one of the absolute craziest things that happened, and still in my life, one of the craziest things that's happened was I was filming one of my episodes of the Paranormal Files in the Yorktown Memorial Hospital. It's this abandoned 3-story hospital built in the 50s outside of San Antonio, Texas. It was a very cool location because the guy who owns the hospital actually keeps it completely sealed off. It's got huge barbed wire fences around it, so there's no one inside, no one contaminating it. It's in a small town of maybe 2 streetlights, so there's no noise outside. It's completely silent. And while we were in there, I got scratched twice. I got scratched so badly that I actually had blood coming out onto my shirt. I didn't see it. And yeah, I just felt this burning sensation, and I had my friend lift my shirt up for me, and it still scares me to look at it because, going and messing with this stuff, it's bound to happen eventually, but when it actually does happen to you, it's really hard to kind of deal with. It really freaked me out. But in that same investigation, we were in the chapel. The hospital was run by nuns. And that's why I think there's so much negative energy there, is because these nuns would give the people that were in the hospital the lowest amount of pain medicine that they could give a patient legally in Texas. So there were a ton of people just constantly suffering there inside the hospital. Childbirth, they would give them the lowest pain meds. They would give people with bullet shots, total, low pain meds. So all this suffering has stained itself on the walls. But when we were in the chapel, I was, kind of swearing. Probably shouldn't do that in a chapel. My girlfriend had a shirt that had the sigil of Satan, Lucifer, on the back. Another thing you probably shouldn't bring into a chapel. But the door was actually opening and shutting by itself on command. Like, it was 100 degrees out that day. Even at night, it was so extremely hot. There was no temperature shift from inside the hospital to the outside. And yet this door in the back of the chapel on command was opening all the way. It would stop. We'd talk to it, ask it to shut, and it would shut it forcefully. Not just, little breeze shutting the door. It would actually move really violently, and you could hear it slam shut. And that's amongst, 100 different things that happen in that episode. It all, really the freaky stuff is when I edit. You go through and you watch the footage, and there's like all of these voices and all of this audio phenomenon that you capture that you don't hear in person, which is truly freaky to me because I'm sitting there in my apartment just trying to edit, and I hear like a child talking into the microphone or people whispering right behind us, and we had no idea that this was happening in person, but only when you're looking through it after the fact do you find this stuff. And it's really freaky. Sometimes I have to literally take my headphones off and just sit there for a minute and try to like calm down because some of the things that you find are just chilling, and that energy kind of comes through the computer and you can just feel it in your body. It's wild. But that one was crazy. The hospital was definitely one of the weirdest investigations I've ever done.
Are you, when you're trying to pick places to go and investigate, what draws your attention to them?
You know, as bad as this sounds, I really prefer the violently haunted places. I like the really negative energy. I really like very, very, very strong presences because, you know, there's so many houses that have spirits. There's so many places that have this, not, I'm going to say weak, but just not present all the time energy. But in some of these places that you go to, like abandoned hospitals, you know, abandoned prisons, old, you know, murder locations, all of that stuff has such a completely negative connotation that it comes through much stronger. And some of the stuff that you're able to capture on camera is just, it's insane. So I'm really a fan of the more negative areas, you know, hospitals, old plantations. For my senior trip, instead of going like, you know, to Cabo with my friends or something, I took my family to New Orleans because I'd never been there. And we stayed in haunted hotels throughout the city and then ended it at the Myrtles Plantation, which is, as you probably know, one of the most haunted places in the U.S. And that was crazy. The energy there is just, whew, you cannot be in there for very long.
Now you say the energy. What happened to you while you were at the Myrtles?
Being at the Myrtles was just, you know, weird straight from the beginning. But my dad actually was sleeping in bed, and the bed started to shake by itself violently. It woke both of us up. It was like he was freaked, you know, could not even think of things to say once it had happened. And I felt a cold hand kind of slide across my chest in the middle of the night as if someone was behind me kind of giving me an embrace or like a hug. Mm-hmm. My sister was hearing things. She refused to stay in our room. By the morning, everyone was just really excited to get out because I don't know, the whole property, I walked around at I think 2, 3 a.m. and you can just feel this very, very negative presence that just kind of surrounds the entire grounds. It's swirling around. The energy spikes, the EMF meter was going crazy on and off, even in the fields, you know, tall grass, it was just going crazy. It is really just an energy there, and one of the really spooky ones that I felt.
Have you ever been in one of these locations where you just feel like maybe you're in over your head, there's just wild, maybe violent, scary activity taking place?
I actually, in Teen Spirit, I think this is going to be the last episode that airs. We investigated this woman's home. The actual woman who owned the home was not there with us. She was off somewhere else, but I was interviewing this girl who house sits for her, and they had had so many experiences, had seen what they thought was a little girl, but they'd never actually seen a little girl. They had just, you know, seen like shapes, heard voices. They thought that it felt like a young female presence. But after I did the investigating there, I was just getting these insane headaches, piercing. Every time I'd step inside the house, it was just like a knife to my temple. It was so bad. I took 6 Motrins one night just trying to get rid of the headache, and it didn't do anything at all. I was barely able to continue filming. There was just this insane negativity as well. You can even see in the episode, I start swearing at the spirits, something that I never do. I was cussing, I was yelling, I was running through the house. I had to actually physically step outside a couple of times and like decompress for 30, 40 minutes because it was such a weird, dark energy. And I told my producers off camera the whole time at our crew dinner the last night, I told them this seems like someone who committed suicide. Does not seem like a little girl. seems to me like someone who shot themselves in the head. It's like I'm feeling whatever this person's pain was. I'm getting their anger. I'm getting their sadness. I'm getting this literal shooting pain in my forehead. We call the owner of the house off camera to try and correlate the names that we got. I should say on camera because we were filming it. To correlate the names that we got on one of our devices. And I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but basically my theory was correct. And the woman who owns the house, who was not there for any of the filming, for nothing, she had contact with us 3-4 times just to align the filming location. Her brother had actually shot himself in the head, and this was her house. And but that was beautiful to me because I try to help people when I investigate these places. It's never just, going in trying to piss off spirits and get evidence for a show.
Right,
I'm actually trying to, figure out what's happening. And by doing this, they actually called us back and thanked us because now the spirit has calmed down so much now that they know that it's not this little girl, that it's actually her brother trying to talk to her. And the other freaky part, the name that came through on the device, it was actually the name of her brother, Tom. It was his name. She broke down crying on the phone, could not believe what had happened. I could not believe what had happened. My producers, both skeptics, we were driving away back to Austin that night, and neither of them said a word the entire time we were driving back. They were so shaken by what had happened. They didn't look at their phones. They were just like looking out the window in complete silence. So that was insane to me that actually happened to me.
So do you consider yourself like a medium or sensitive?
I definitely am sensitive, and I'm very intuitive, and I'm also an empath. Not that that's, psychic or spiritual, but it helps a lot in these investigations to be able to connect with these energies. Emotions are energy. So being an empath, you're just naturally able to coerce these things into a response. But throughout the years, all the psychics I've talked to have said that they felt that I have a third eye or some ability that I need to develop, and I'll be able to open. And I really do think that I have that ability, but at the moment I can't, see ghosts or, spirits or be able to actually directly communicate with them yet, but it is something that I would kill to be able to do. But
you picked up on the fact that you thought this was definitely a suicide. I mean, you're obviously making some kind of connection that way.
Exactly. I just don't know what it is, because that has not happened to me before. I could not believe that it actually happened. But after that, I've been really trying to put way more focus on actually sitting there and trying to call out to the spirits in my head when I investigate, and trying to make a true psychic connection with them, because, it does work sometimes. It'll be weird. I'll sit there for 5 minutes in the dark calling out to something, and after I ask in my head for a knock, there'll be a knock. And I don't know if that's correlated in any way, but I feel like my abilities, whatever they are just growing stronger as I get older. Because my family has somewhat of a history with, psychic abilities. My grandma saw her cousin right before she died in her bedroom. Her cousin was from Norway. My grandma lived in North Dakota. She saw the cousin actually walking to her or towards her in the bedroom. And, my aunt is actually in Peru right now, taking ayahuasca and becoming even more spiritual herself. She's on a 2-week spiritual journey. So I'd say that there is that running, stream throughout the family. It's there. But I just need to figure out exactly how to develop it.
Are you afraid once you open that portal, it may be hard to shut back down? I mean, once you start letting the ghosts and spirits stream live to you, that may be something that, might end up becoming a bit of a curse.
A lot of people would look at it that way, but if I were able to actually open up that eye and open myself up as a portal or a conduit, I would be the happiest guy in the world, because, no matter what, I'm really not scared of spirits. It doesn't faze me in any way, especially after all the things that I've seen investigating all these buildings and staying in these places. It's more just, it's beautiful to me. And I really don't care if I get scratched. A scratch is a scratch. I get hurt all the time. I trip, I fall, scrape my knee. That doesn't scare me, I really don't think that spirits have the ability to kill people. I don't think that they can seriously, harm you, even though there has been some evidence that, a spirit may have given someone a heart attack or something like that. But I don't think that in my life I'm ever going to have, an energy like that comes to me. Those are just extremely rare.
All right, Colin, I know our time is slipping by here, and I want to talk a little bit more about some of the experiences you've had. What's your favorite aspect of ghost hunting? Do you like the video, photographic, EVP, or do you like just shutting down and being part of the experience?
Well, I would say that my favorite part personally would be what you were talking about, as so much as actually being there in person. Because that's the most powerful thing that you're ever going to feel when you're investigating these paranormal experiences. It's not, like I said before, a woman in a white dress floating towards you down a hallway. It's how you feel. And that's why it just frustrates me, because trying to do these programs for people, I'm not going to be able to take that element of the paranormal investigation, which is literally 50% of what you're doing when you're there and feeling, and put that onto video and audio, because you literally can't. There's nothing that can capture that right now. There's no device, there is no camera, there is no sensor that can accurately take how you feel and put it onto a video, because that's just something you have to go out yourself and experience. Even with the video, I could take, a legitimate full-out video of an apparition, full-bodied, head to toes, clothing, face and all, and put that on the internet, and people would still say that it's fake. So there's no true element, I feel like, to my videos that is, as solid as I'd like it to be, because people will still think that it's fake just seeing it online. There's always that element of, oh, this dude's just faking it to get famous. This dude just wants, to get paid to do this. That's not at all. I'm doing it because I'm really passionate and just, like you, like everyone else, I'm just curious about it. It's not like me trying to be some sort of celebrity. It's me just seriously wanting to know what happens when you die. And if you can go out there and feel that kind of energy and be comforted in the way as you're actually connecting with it and feeling that you're not alone and that this is real, that to me is the best part. It's comforting. It's not scary. I always tell people, I would never go ghost hunting with you. That's like the scariest thing ever. I would never want to go to this haunted place. It's like, why? These places are beautiful. Like, so many of them have such rich history. And on top of that, you can connect with this energy that it clues you into life, into death, and you feel that it courses through you. It's a pulsating thing, and all these places are just truly alive. But the feeling is just uncomparable, especially when it's a good energy, which is most of spirits. It's usually just a positive, electricity, and it energizes you, and you're just sitting there thinking, I'm not alone. It's beautiful.
What about the dark side? When you do run into that, how often do you run into things that you feel are truly malevolent and have a darker path?
A lot of these places that I've been to, they have all these urban legends that have arisen around them. Goat Man. There's a serial killer from the 50s who slaughtered victims here, and he and his victims are the ones that haunt the land. That's not true at all. And I think that a lot of places that are haunted, supposedly, are actually not haunted at all. They don't have a serial killer dressed as a goat that scares people and is ghosts. That's just, a load of crap. But when you go to a truly evil place, like a hospital, where there was a lot of malpractice, like a psychiatric ward, where people and patients were actually locked up and abused, or the home where a mass murder happened, 5, 6 people all got stabbed, or even, a jail. That is where these negative energies live, when it's completely empty and there's no one there to interact with them, and they're just given free reign over the entire area. That's where you'll go in and just instantly feel, dude, something is not right. And that is even stronger than the positive. When you feel that negative energy, that is like instant red flag. You know exactly, I can't be in here that long. I don't want to, poke and prod these spirits into like an explosive response, because, I say that I don't mind being scratched, because I really don't. But a lot of people, if they got scratched like I have, would, swear to God that they'd never do any sort of thing like that ever again. So it's always it's in the same places: hospitals, psychiatric wards, prisons, crime scenes. It's where this negative energy has imprinted in the environment, that it either draws these negative entities there through some sort of portal that's been opened, or it creates it itself through the events that occurred there.
You go to so many locations like this, Colin, that have dark histories and dark pasts. If you believe that it's just this kind of stone tape theory, there's just this darkness kind of embedded, are you ever worried about an attachment or being followed by spirits? And if so, what do you do to protect yourself? For listeners and some of the young, we've got a lot of younger listeners that are interested in paranormal investigation. What should they do to make sure that they're not opening themselves up for spiritual ass kicking?
I like that term, spiritual ass kicking.
Yeah, it's a thing.
But I would say to people that you should just treat everything with respect. Don't go in with the intent to piss something off to get a response. Don't, claim, I open myself to everything to come into my soul and, attach yourself to me and blah, blah. Don't invite them in. Just be nice. Go in, talk to them like humans. They may not necessarily be the spirit of a human, but this energy is like us. It can understand what we're saying somehow. It knows, how we're feeling. Maybe not the words that we're saying, but the energy that we're projecting out of our bodies and the emotion. They can connect to that. So if you just go in with a positive, I'm not afraid, mentality, you're going to have a good experience. You're not going to have that spirit that really clings on and wants to make your life total hell. But I would say that this last summer, it's actually in some of my videos on the Paranormal Files on the YouTube. I don't know where I got it from, but I got a really bad attachment that for a couple of weeks really made my life a living hell. I had friends call me from out of state. Actually, I do know where it was from. It was in Galveston. That's where I think I got it from. I was investigating the Galvez Hotel in Galveston, one of the most haunted places in Texas, supposedly. And we went to this one cemetery there that's supposed to be also extremely haunted. And after that, about a week later, I got back to South Dakota for summer. And one of my friends from Houston, I had not posted about Galveston anywhere, not on any of my social media. Nobody even knew that I was there besides my girlfriend who I was there with. And this girl texted me saying, have you ever been to Galveston? I'm like, yeah, I was there last week. She said, have you ever heard of the Broadway Cemetery #1? I was like, oh my God, I was there last week. I was in that cemetery. She texted me that in her dreams, I was murdering her in the cemetery, in that very cemetery. She's been there multiple times since she was a kid, but she saw me and I was killing her. But my eyes were completely warped and something about it was not me. But she wanted to call me because she was like crying. It had happened 3 or 4 times in a row. Same exact dream, 4 different nights. And as this kind of stuff started to happen, I began to notice that, it wasn't just weird things that were happening. This was a trend. Something had locked itself onto me. This is in one of the videos. I was in Rapid City, South Dakota, Hotel Axe Johnson, one of the most haunted places in the whole state, one of the haunted rooms in the building. And I was taking a shower, and the light actually fell out of the ceiling and almost hit me in the head, the actual light fixture. It was about 2 inches above my head. And if it would have snapped, it could have killed me. It was like very heavy. And that happened, after I'd been telling people about how I think this attachment is following me. And I started to get these weird vibes. The next day, we were at an Indian buffet restaurant for lunch. I'm walking by the actual buffet tray with my girlfriend. And, they have those circular things that you open up with like the rice and the chicken. One of those things actually flew up by itself violently right when I walked by, like exploded. And I jumped. All of us jumped. Everyone who was around. It was so loud. No one was even at the buffet. And I shut it. I know I'm very skeptical, so I tried to jump on the ground around it, tried to get it to move. There was nothing. It wasn't even a spring-loaded thing. You had to like physically push it back. There was no spring to pull it back, which blows my mind. And I did a Ouija board actually that next day. And I think that was the first time that I made legitimate contact with this entity. And it said that it wanted me to die, amongst other things. But it was giving us really chilling, really, really just hard to even process at the time messages. My girlfriend and I were playing using the Ouija board, and the planchette would move so fast and so violently that we'd look at each other and say, "You're doing that. You're doing that." And I'm like, I'm not even touching you. Like, that's you. Like, stop doing that. Like, you're freaking me out. She's like, I'm not doing that. That's you. And we'd like get into a fight because it was so strong. And it was neither of us doing it. And it was spelling out these crazy things. And after all that, I actually went in and got a cleansing ceremony done on me. And the psychic said that I had one of the most dark entities that she's ever felt attached to me. And, that's really, to me, scary to hear, because it didn't seem that bad until I started to talk to it. And I think I kind of invited it into my life. And past then, there was just weird stuff that was happening. I was very angry all the time, really just pissed off. I was irritable. I was losing sleep. My other friends were having nightmares. They were texting me, seeing me in like fields by myself, like all this really weird stuff. And that culminated in getting the thing cleansed. But once that happened, it was so much better. It completely went away. And I haven't felt any of those weird emotions like since, I would say that was back in June. It's now October. It hasn't happened in a couple months, but hopefully it stays away. But it does happen. That's end of the line. What I'm trying to say is that attachments are very real. So people just have to be careful what they're messing with and what energy they're putting out, because it's like the wicked rule of thirds. Everything that you put out in the world comes back to you threefold. Put out bad energy, you're going to have bad things happen to you. Put out good energy, you're going to live a blissful life for the most part. It all depends on you in the equation.
That's a great way to go out. Colin Browen, thank you so much for joining us. We'll have links up to your shows, and we wish you much success in the future. Please keep us in mind. Let us know what's going on and when you're back to filming for the next season.
I will. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. Happy Halloween.
You too. It's been a pleasure. And thank you all for tuning in and being part of our world. Remember, I'm hosting Coast to Coast AM tonight and tomorrow. So go find local stations in your area by visiting coasttocoastam.com/stations. That's coasttocoastam.com/stations. Or you can listen right from our home studio at KNSIradio.com. That's KNSIradio.com. Thank you to our sponsors today, Lore on Amazon Prime Video, and to Warby Parker. You'll find a link for that on today's show as well. That's it for today. We'll be back next week as we face Halloween together on Supernatural News Parashare Monday right here on Beyond the Darkness.